Welcome to today's webinar. We are going to get started right now, so appreciate everyone joining. My name is Katie Gallagher. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for our Teaching and Learning line of business at Blackboard. I focus specifically on K through 12, and I'll be serving as the moderator for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series this spring. A big thank you to Ryan McLaughlin, who will be helping us out throughout the spring from our field marketing team, and Jenny Breister as well. We'll be joining you for the spring Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series, and we're always open to new ideas for topics for the series. Please let us know if you have an interest in presenting a future session this fall. Just send us an email or a tweet or give us a call. And it would help if I advanced the slides, so I'm sorry about that. But that's your K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series team there, myself, Ryan, and Jenny. Just a reminder that each webinar in this series will be recorded. You can search for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series playlist on the Blackboard TV YouTube channel, or go to tinyurl.com/bitsk12. And you can find the entire playlist from all the past sessions. You'll be receiving the recording from today's sessions and a PDF of the slides in a few days. You'll be able to find in our new Blackboard community site with a group set up specifically for the K-12 Blackboard Innovative Teaching Series. So we would like for all of you today, you can even do it while you're on the session. We'd love for you to go to the site and sign up. All of the recordings for each session are posted in the group on the community site, as well as the PDF of the slides. So please join our community site. It's a great place to augment the series and to create an avenue for ongoing collaboration and dialogue, which we believe is the most valuable part of this program. So upcoming, we've got a whole schedule planned for this spring. We've got 12 exciting sessions. Our next session is in 2 weeks on Monday, February 8th, again at 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central, with Patty Savage from the Schultz Learning Center. So be sure to go to bbbb.blackboard.com. You can sign up for the whole series and for that session then. And then we have a session mostly every single week. On the 22nd, we've got Atlanta Public Schools. And on the 29th of February, David Hammond will be talking about flipping his high school chemistry classroom with Blackboard. So a great, the next 3 sessions in the series. We are super excited today and privileged to have Paula Barr with us. She is a 2nd grade teacher at Quail Run in Lawrence, Kansas. And she was just recognized as the iNACOL Teen Blended and Online Learning Teacher of the Year. She's fresh back from a trip to China, and she'll be able to share her experiences with you today. So we're really happy to welcome Paula Barr. And before I hand it to Paula, just a little housekeeping, what Paula's presenting, and so we open up for questions, or if you have a question throughout, everyone in the room could turn their microphone off so that we have a clean recording and we can hear Paula in that recording. So with that, Paula, I hand it to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great, and you're more than welcome to share a video too. But yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today. I would like to start by just telling you a little bit about myself. So first of all, I've been teaching for 34 years. I am not a spring chicken anymore, and so making the change to a blended learning classroom was a bit of a challenge for me, which I will talk about today. I have been a blended teacher for 3 years, and I was at a time in my life where I was kind of considering retirement. I was starting to count those years down, and then I had the opportunity to walk into a colleague's classroom, Diana Bailey, who teaches 5th grade at a nearby school, and I spent about an hour watching her blended learning students, and I was just wowed at their self-reliance and what was happening in the classroom, and I walked out thinking, want to do that. I want my 8-year-olds, my second graders to look like that. And I know with just 40 teachers, K through 12, and I was selected as one of those teachers. Then to begin implementing learning environment. It was very tough at the beginning because for me it was very disruptive in as far as a paradigm shift in thinking about education and teaching. It was a huge learning curve for me, both the paradigm shift and the technology part. At my age, I didn't grow up with technology, and I had a lot to learn. The first year was rough. I wanted to give up a lot. There were many days that I would go home and think, okay, I'm just going to call them tomorrow and tell them to come get all this technology. I just can't do this. And then I would wake up the next morning and pull myself up by my bootstraps and get back in there and try again. And I'm so glad I did. I began with more failures than successes, but then pretty soon I started to see more successes than failures. Then the miracle happened. I watched my students transform into these amazingly engaged, self-reliant, enthusiastic, collaborative community, and I realized that it was all worth it. It was great. And so one of the things that has to happen for me, at least, before I could even start making a shift, and now before I plan, is I have to think about my core values and what it is that I want to see happening in my classroom. Our grade level of 4s teachers recently did this together, and it was such a great activity for us to sit down and together list our core values of what we would like happening in the classroom, because now when we make decisions and collaborate, we base everything on these values. We want to see that personalized learning, and we want students to be empowered and to be self-reliant and to make their own decisions about their learning. We want that learning to be student-driven. We want them to have a growth mindset, and we want the engagement to be very high. And that time and space that they learn in needs to be flexible. And we want to share with them a passion for discovery and investigation, for learning, for creating and designing. All of those things, we felt like everything that happens in our classroom needs to revolve around those core values. I recently had the opportunity to attend the very first U.S. Smart Education Conference in Beijing, China. It was an amazing experience. I think the thing that stood out the most to me was that both in U.S. and China, we are parallel in our quest for more engaging, more collaborative opportunities for our students to prepare them for that 21st century workplace. One of the presenters, Jeff Faust, had some information that was intriguing to me. He had done quite a bit of research and found information that that all the knowledge and information and data is projected in the near future to double every 12 hours. And employers want employees who can work in collaborative teams, are self-reliant problem solvers, have technical skills and the ability to both create and design, and they have organizational skills and the ability to analyze data. And he was telling us that students who are graduating today from traditional classrooms will have less than half the skills of what they need to be successful in today's workspace. That really had a huge impact on me when I started thinking about what is happening in the classroom. And so I thought back again to those core values, and then I started to think about how our district made the decision to disrupt what we're doing and to become a blended learning environment. First of all, the experts excuse me, on blended learning are I believe the Christensen Institute and Clayton Christensen and Michael Horn, who've done a lot of work in the area of blended. But our district had to have a blended environment that fit and met the needs of our district, our teachers, our students, and what our values were. And so we looked at the work of the Christensen Institute. We also looked at the work of John Bergman and Aaron Sams, who have written several books on the flipped classroom. We looked at their work, we looked at some research, and then we had amazing leadership under the assistant superintendents, Dr. Adam Holden and Dr. Angelique Nedved. And we all looked at this work and said, what is it that we need for our district? What is blended learning going to look like in our district? And we needed to start slow. So we looked at how to provide flexible spaces, how to increase student engagement. We definitely did not want to be one-to-one, and that was purposeful because blended learning was not for us about the technology. Technology definitely enhances it, and I really feel like that makes it so much easier. But the blended environment needed to be student-driven and collaborative, first of all, and design-based, first of all, and then add the technology to help enhance that. We needed a reliable learning management system, and Blackboard provided that. And I will talk a little bit later about how we and how it has literally become our plan book. Then we needed effective professional development, and we stumbled a little bit at first, because at first we provided that professional development that you're used to, where one person stood in front, like I'm doing today, where I'm doing all the talking, and the learners the teachers were in the audience, and we realized that's not effective professional development for teachers when we want to send them out to the blended learning environment and have them create that environment. So we changed our professional development to help them experience it as well as prepare them to walk into the classroom. We had to communicate with both our blended learning, about blended learning with our parents and the community, because this was brand new and a lot of our parents had never heard of this. And the minute we said, part of your student's day is going to be online, red flags went up, screen time, too much screen time. And so we had to convince parents that what we were doing was going to be a more engaging environment for them. And then, of course, the difficulty of initiating and maintaining that paradigm shift from traditional to blended. You first have to make that shift, and then you have to maintain it, and had to think about how to do that. Then we also had to look at our learners and think, why do we want to blend in the first place? And so I made this slide thinking this is what was going through my mind when I started thinking about making that shift from traditional to blended. Is I would think about the kiddos sitting in my class, and they were still at groups of 4. They weren't in rows like this, but it was that same thing. It was that I was looking at those kiddos. Some were frustrated because they had already learned what I had taught the day before or last week or last year, and some I was going way too fast and they wanted me to slow down and wanted me to speed up, and some were checked out because I was talking and they just heard blah, blah, blah. And some had holes in their learning and couldn't even connect with what I was teaching because I was one universal lesson to everybody, expecting that to meet the needs of everybody. Struggling students got pulled along. Students that needed a challenge were bored. They were teacher-directed lessons. I did all the work. I did all the talking. That had to change. And so our district started by inviting 40 teachers at the beginning to make this paradigm shift. The next year 80, and this year 120. And yes, we are adding teachers a little bit at a time. Our district's goal is that in 5 years we will be 100% blended. And the school in which I'm teaching went from me being the only blender 3 years ago to next year we will be 100% blended within our school, elementary school. So there's definitely once you have been bitten, it's pretty hard to go back to that traditional setting. So first of all, what is the shift? What kind of a shift had to happen? Because it was a huge shift. First, a paradigm shift, and just rethinking how I was going to have my learners doing all the work and have authentic opportunities, but still meet the Common Core standards that I'm responsible for. And then also, so it was a mental shift, but it was also a physical shift for me. I had to slim down, not me personally, but my classroom. All the files and the space that I was taking up with my teacher stuff had to go. I was one person out of 25 in the classroom, but I was taking up certainly more than my share of the space, file cabinets and huge desk and teacher materials. And so that was the first thing that went. I also got rid of all the garage sale furniture and lamps and things. And that was just what I did to streamline my classroom. And then I had 4 drawer file cabinets full. Why I was keeping all that stuff, I have no idea. 34 years of teaching, I guess I just thought I needed to keep it, but I didn't. And so I got rid of all of those. I have no file cabinets now. And I didn't just do it all at once. I got down to half, like 1 drawer in a file cabinet, and then I held on to that last drawer. But at the end of my first year as blended, I realized I just don't need this stuff, and so I got rid of the rest of it. I got rid of the me-pleasing, Pinterest-inspired, beautiful decorations in my room. It was great. I loved it. But you know who it pleased? It pleased me. It was not for the students. And so I realized I needed to make this classroom their classroom. They're the ones who are here learning every day. It needs to be their classroom. And so I took all that stuff down and I started with whiteboards all the way around the classroom. And I'll talk a little bit later about how I did that. And round tables and chairs. And I took all the bulletin boards down and got everything off the walls and gave the students a chance to turn those walls into their workspace as opposed to my decorating it to please me. I redesigned the space so it was streamlined and clean and flexible and easy for students to move about because they move all day long. Then I had shifts to make. I had to think, how am I going to enable my students to find the information and do the learning themselves? How am I going to give them the freedom to demonstrate their learning in a way that is the best and most pleasing to them? How am I going to make homework authentic and the work that I ask them to do authentic? I had to rethink things like, how many times am I going to allow them to take a test? Does it matter? All those things I had to rethink as I entered into this change. Whoops, I'm going to go back one. I have a picture in the corner of a swimming pool. If you've listened to any of my presentations before, you've probably heard this a million times, but it's the best way for me to describe the difference between a traditional classroom and a blended learning classroom in my mind. As a traditional classroom teacher, I was the vessel that held all the knowledge, like a vase with all the water in it, and I poured it into my 25 little sponges. I decided when they would receive that knowledge, how they would receive it, how they would demonstrate their learning to me. I made all those decisions, and I did the work of putting together all the knowledge and then trying to disseminate it in an exciting, entertaining way. But I was doing all the work. Now I take my 25 little sponges, I just toss them in the pool, and we have to get across the pool or meet our common standards for our state, and I toss them in, and some of them have water wings and they need my help to get them across. Some of them work together, build a raft, and off they go. They don't need me at all. Some of them have already swum across this pool and gotten out and gone on to the next pool. And some get out of the pool and just walk around because they are on their own path. All of those are exactly the way they learn, and all of those are great ways. But I wasn't meeting all of those students' needs before. I found I am now. So I'm going to give you just a little peek inside the classroom. There is no more a front of the room because the reason there's no front of the room is I'm not standing in front of the room anymore doing all the teaching. My students are doing all the work. And so, in fact, last year, out of habit, I had my students were working on some projects, and they said, where are we going to put these when we're done? Because they were huge. And I said, oh, just stack them in the front of the room. And one of my students said, where is the front of it? Oh my gosh, he's right. We don't have a front of the room. And so we have whiteboard tables. We have non-traditional seating, as you can see in the picture, some of these little rocking stools and different chairs that they have. We have collaboration stations, which I love. These are 2 half-moon tables with about 4 chairs around them, and they have it holds a 31-inch screen connected to a Mac Mini with headphones, and I can have groups of students work here. And because that 31-inch screen provides that nice big screen, they can work together, and everybody can see together as they're doing their research. We have purposely limited devices. I have 5 Mac Airs and 5 iPads for 25 students. And then the collab stations. But we did this on purpose because want our we don't want to turn the devices just to a digital textbook. We want them to use them purposefully to enhance their learning and to help them with their learning, but not to replace a textbook or just to have one-to-one with headphones on and not interact. The collaboration part of the day is extremely important to how we set up our blended learning environments. And again, excuse me, I'm always I'm always thinking this is their classroom, not mine. What do I need to do to make it a better learning environment for them? So at the beginning of the year, before we actually jump in and I just turn learning over to them, some things have to occur. I don't know about your kiddos, but my kiddos don't come to me as very effective collaborators. So first we had to build a community of trust among each other and trust with me. They also had to have collaborative skills. They were not effective collaborators. They needed to know how to work together to accomplish a common goal and how to coach each other. And then I would introduce the devices with non-challenging academic tasks, so that as they played with the devices and learned with the devices before I asked them to do the serious work, they had an opportunity to explore and get all that out of the way before I asked them to do the serious work with those devices. I made troubleshooting charts because I want my students to be self-reliant. I don't want me to be the first person they run to when they're having a tech difficulty. So I have these troubleshooting charts in the classroom, like, I can't hear, what do I do now? And they have to go through the checklist and try everything on the checklist. And you'll notice my name is last on purpose, because I don't want you to come to me until you've exhausted everything you can think of to figure this out for yourself. I want to really promote those students to be self-reliant. And it's really important. We've done a lot of work in our classroom with Carol DeWeck's work on growth mindset, that they have the mindset that I just need to keep persevering and keep trying, and that's how I'm going to reach my goals. So the learning management system we use is Blackboard, and I've come a long way with Blackboard. The very first year I was blending, I was afraid of it because I'm old and it was technology, and I thought, I'm gonna blow it up or something. But then once I got over that and started using it, I thought, oh my gosh, how did I do this without Blackboard? Blackboard is the place that houses all the information, everything that I want my students to access to go ahead and learn is there. The video clips, the links, any information that I have written in second grade speak that I want them to access is there. Blackboard is literally my plan book. When our group of 4 teachers works together at our grade level, and we take turns building on Blackboard. We all build together. We kind of divide up the work so that we each take part of the work and build. And so many times we've said, okay, so how are we going to approach this for our kids? And we'll say, well, let's just take a look at Blackboard and see how we're going to set it up. And then that's our plan book. That's how we talk to each other through Blackboard, and that's how we're able to keep track of what our students are doing and what our expectations are for them. So it organizes and explains all the assignments, and of course we take advantage of the group discussion through the discussion boards and the wikis and the journals and all the excellent pieces that are part of Blackboard. But the greatest part is that it allows me to differentiate, but it allows my students to be personalized in their learning. What one student needs to accomplish is different than another, because what their paths are
going on.
Sorry, I'm getting an interruption. Their paths are as different as they are as students. And so the other thing that Blackboard allows me to do is to take their learning out of the classroom, out of the brick and mortar of the classroom. They take that learning home. They take that learning, they leave the classroom at the end of the day. They can go home and get right on Blackboard and continue to learn. They can show their parents what they're doing. And then I hear them all the time as they're leaving. Okay, I'll go home, and then let's get on Blackboard, and then let's go ahead and finish this project. And the whole time they're talking to each other about how to continue their learning right outside of the classroom. So let me go to the next slide here. Oops. So one of the myths that I hear more from other teachers than anybody else, but also from parents, is that, well, blended learning means that they're just sitting on a computer and they're just watching a bunch of videos and then they do worksheets and then that's it and then they go on to the next. That is absolutely not what it is, or at least that's not what it is in my definition or in my classroom or in our district. For us, a blend of some online learning, but a great deal of our day is in a collaborative situation where they are doing the investigation and the discovery. Those are key parts for us of blended learning. That ability for them to design and create and work together and use those more rigorous skills. So the work is all student driven. Here are some pictures to show you that although the background information needed for them to continue these investigations was provided on Blackboard, and they had that background information before they started, they are still using that classroom time for important investigations that to enhance their learning. So what were some of the biggest shifts that I had to overcome? I get this question a lot from teachers who are thinking about making the plunge into blended learning, and I have to say the hardest thing for me at the beginning was to let go of the control. I had been in charge of my students for 30-some years, and I had made all the decisions, and I was the boss. And even though it was still a student, I still was pretty innovative and have always been, and it was a pretty student-driven environment. I was still in control. And now what I had to do was I had to put all their learning in a place where they did the work and they did the learning and the investigations and the discovery, and then they took all that learning and chose how to demonstrate to me that they had the skills and the content and the information I wanted them to learn. And I had to trust them. I had to just let go. And I remember the first day that I was finally at a point where it was math, and we came in to the classroom from another environment, and I said, okay, it's math time. You know what you need. You know where to go. Get what you need and get started. And I turned my back on them and just prayed that they would actually do what they were supposed to do. And they looked at me for a minute. I could feel their little eyes on the back of my head. And then I heard this noise, and I turned around, and everybody is up and getting what they need and getting started. And that was the first time that I didn't tell them what to do. I just said, okay, go. Now that's every day. I mean, we just come in and get to work, and they don't need my direction at all. I'm simply here as a facilitator and to guide their learning and to help those who need help in a small group. But I've let go of the control, and they're in charge now. I had to trust them to take control of their learning and actually do the learning, because you as a teacher, you want to run around and peek over their shoulders and make sure that they're getting everything perfectly right. But I learned that it's okay that they don't have everything perfectly right, because they need to make mistakes in order to learn. Getting rid of all the stuff in my room was a challenge for me, especially my desk. I don't know why, but that was really hard for me. They took my desk and I felt lost. Like I'm not a teacher anymore. And now that I've been without a desk for 3 years, I think, why did I need a desk? I don't know. Technology. I'm in my 50s. I didn't grow up with technology. And now I was going to have to not only be in charge of putting their information in a place where they could get to it through technology, but I was going to have them on technology all day long and have to know how to help them when they were troubleshooting. And at the beginning, I didn't know. And so somebody would have a problem, I would have no idea how to solve it, and I would just turn to the class and say, okay, I don't know what to do. Anybody know how to fix this? And you know what? Somebody did. And so I just learned to just let them help each other and help me. I had to be okay with allowing students to move beyond the grade level curriculum if that's where they were. And I also had to learn to be okay with allowing students to slow way down and to go through the curriculum at a slower pace, such that maybe at the end of the year, there might be a unit of study they didn't get to because they had to spend more time on something else, and be okay with that, and then communicate that to next year's teachers. What helped the most was definitely the transparency. Not only transparency transparency with my students, but also transparency with my colleagues. So I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning because this was a huge shift for me. And so definitely I had a lot of failures. And when I made mistakes and had failures, I would say in front of my students, boy, that was a mess today, and then we would talk about why it was a mess and how we can make it better next time. But what was great about that was what a great opportunity to model for my students. Hey, guess what? We all make mistakes, and here's how you handle it. You don't throw yourself on the floor and cry, even though I wanted to. You kind of go through what happened. You're calm, and you deal with the failure, and then you persevere and think of ways to make it better and work through it and fix it. And so I modeled that for my students because I allowed myself to fail in front of them. And that's hard for a lot of teachers who are the teacher, and you're supposed to have all the answers. But I found my students trusted me more when I failed in front of them than before when I tried to look like I knew everything all the time. I also allowed myself to fail in front of my colleagues, and I think this had a lot to do with why so many colleagues in our building have been willing to go ahead and join our quest for blended learning, because they watched me fail and I talked about it, and then I would talk about not only my failures but my successes. But I stood in front of them and said, today was really a bad day because this happened, this happened, this happened. But they didn't see me quit, even though maybe a couple of times I wanted to. They didn't see me fall apart. I did, sometimes go home in tears. I did drink a little more wine the first year than I usually do. But I picked myself up and brought myself back and modeled that grit, that sticking with it. And even if you want to give up, you don't. And I think that when they see that, they're like, okay, if she can do this, I can do this. Also being flexible. If plan A doesn't work, then you move on to B, C, and D. I had a student say to me one time, what are we, on plan F by now? And it's true. You just keep on going. Sharing your failures and successes with others is very therapeutic, but it also helps them as they think about moving forward. And I started with one curricular area. I started with math. That was what seemed to work for me, because I could put my videos of my math lessons online and my students could do them at home, flipping them, or they could do them in the classroom. That allowed me, because they were watching the videos, that allowed me to call small groups of students who needed face-to-face time with me. Those who could work ahead were so excited that they got to work ahead. Those that needed the challenge, those that needed to face-to-face got to have face-to-face every day. And those who were happy to do the videos and move at their own pace were able to do that. So the videos and having those videos on Blackboard and starting with math was the best way for me. However, other colleagues have told me it was easier for them to start with a bigger content area like social studies and science, where they could take the whole unit of study, put all of that on Blackboard, and guide their students through that information and content, and help them learn how to learn that content and then demonstrate their learning in various ways. So it's kind of whatever works for you, but there is a warning. Once you have made that shift, and once you start, it's very difficult to go back. Once I had made the shift and began blending, I could no longer think like a traditional teacher. I could only think, how am I going to get that information in a place where my students can access it? So questions from colleagues that I get, probably the first question I get is how to plan for blended learning. And I start with the Common Core always. For us, it's called the Kansas College and Career Ready standards, but that's our version of the Common Core. And I start right there because that's my curriculum. Everything else is my resources to help my students to move along that path. And so I start there, and then as I think out, okay, this is what I want my students to learn. This is where I want them to be at the end of this unit of study. Now, what information do I need to put on Blackboard through links, through information that I simply write or video clips that I make or videos I find. What information needs to be on there so that they have a variety of ways to learn this information, but also so that I am have a way for students who need to challenge to have that challenge and the more rigorous push, and those students who need to slow down or have the information in a way that's easier for them to understand, that I have that on there as well. So I have to think about all of that, and then once I have it on Blackboard and I have it all organized so that students can move through it at their pace, then I just turn them loose and let them go. And of course, I'm still the guide in this classroom. I'm still the one who's facilitating their learning. So as I go through and I notice that we need to take this path, or this student is struggling and needs to go here or whatever, I can still do that. I can still jump in and make those changes. Sometimes I am adding to Blackboard in the classroom as the students are working, because someone will say, oh, I really want to go here now. And so boom, I'm adding information and links. And then of course my students are also investigating on their own as well. The next question I get is, how do I assess my students and keep track of their progress? Well, absolutely. We still have the same yearly assessments that probably all of you have. We use measures of academics of performance, which is MAP, and we use Ames Web, and we give those 3 times a year, like most of you do. And we have state and national testing that we do. And so we have the same testing that all of you do. And I definitely use that information to inform the paths that I help my students to develop. But I find that information is so much more less informative for me now than it ever has been, because now I am no longer in front of the room and dependent on the papers that my students turn in and the work that I observe them doing on a whiteboard or something. Now I am in the mix with my students. I am head to head with them every day. We are side by side as they are learning. So wow, I know my students better than I have ever known them before, because I watch them move through those strategies, and I watch them make the mistakes and then go back and go, oh, wait a minute, and correct it. And I watch the strategies that they're using and the mistakes they make and the choices they make as they learn. And so that helps me as a teacher to know them so much better for assessment reasons, but to help inform what their next step is going to be. And so I do use, they still have quizzes that they turn into me. They still have some paper pencil work that I write, so that I have some documentation of their progress, but they also have lots of ways that they can demonstrate their learning to me. You can see here that it might be a whiteboard, it might be paper pencil, it might be a computer generated product. It's up to them. Where do I find my resources? I do make a lot of my own videos, because that way I have control, oops, there's that word, control, over exactly what, for example, if video for a child who's struggling with a certain concept, I can pinpoint that so that the video is just for them. Or if I have a kiddo who's needing a challenge and needs to be pushed a little farther, I can make a video that actually serves that child's needs. But I like resources, and of course I use LearnZillion and Khan Academy, and iTube is a great resource, and I'm if somebody has already made a great video, I use it. Then the other resources besides the web and my own videos is a lot of times we'll write in second grade speak the information on Blackboard that my students to access, and I just write it myself so that they can read it and access it and to further their learning. So how do I communicate with parents? The most powerful thing that I do is open my classroom, not right away, but towards usually about November or December, when my students are comfortable in their role as blended learners and I'm comfortable in how they're doing, I open my classroom once a week. We call it Open Wednesday. I give my parents some parameters so that they're not showing up during my period, or they're not showing up when my students are not in the classroom. So I give them some time parameters, but they can just drop in without appointment. They do sign in at the office, and they come on down. And when they come in, I ask them to go ahead and have a seat and just join their children. Whatever their children are doing, just jump in and help them. And I've had parents that say, I think I'm just going to observe today. I'm just going to go back and sit in the back and watch. And I'll say, well, good luck with that, because every adult in this classroom is fair game, and you are considered a resource if you're in here. And sure enough, those parents that's going to watch in the back of the room are usually back there 30 seconds before somebody grabs their hand and yanks them to their table or wherever they're working. But this has been the best way to communicate with parents, because they are in here and they are watching these amazingly engaged students who are working at their own pace, and they're all at different levels, all at the same time, and they're watching the students be in charge of their learning, and that's extremely effective, because as a parent, that's what you want for your students, for your kiddos to be at school and be engaged and happy and really pushing to learn more. And so they see that. The thing that's helped is I send a weekly newsletter home with pictures that highlights what's going in the classroom. It's just a quick snapshot each week of what happened in the classroom, and then a quick little calendar of what's up for the next week. It doesn't take very long to put together. I use the same template, just change out the pictures and change out the activities for the next coming week. But that has been a huge. Parents tell me that's really helpful, because it gives them a snapshot of what's going on in the classroom. The other thing is that we definitely have shared about blended learning for our school board, during school board meetings, at the community level, certainly within the district with other teachers. So the word is out. Do we have parents that request blended classrooms? Absolutely. Do we have parents whose students are not in a blended classroom and are possibly unhappy? Yes. That healthy pressure is good, though, because we want parents to feel like blended learning is an opportunity for their child. That's a really good opportunity, and that healthy pressure helps all of us to take a look at what we're doing and try to be more innovative and to step up to the 21st century and make that learning in what the kids need. And so it's okay to have that healthy pressure. I think that's part of why we went from a school with one blended learning teacher to a school next year with all blended learning teachers, K through 5. How about homework? This has been probably a huge change. Number one, my students, when they walk in the door, I get here at 7:30. School starts at 8:45, and I have students who are walking in my classroom at 8 or 7:45 and saying, "Hey, do you care if I just go ahead and get on Blackboard and start my work?" They're not here early because they're playing games. They're not here early because they're drawing pictures or messing around. They're here because they're ready to get started on their work. So absolutely, I say yes. Yes, if I'm here, come in the classroom and get started. I have students that we had a newspaper reporter in our classroom last year, and he was doing a story on blended learning, and it was recess time, and I still share recess duty with other teachers, so I kind of have to stick with that schedule. And so I rang my bell and said, "Oh, it's recess time," and they groaned and said, "Oh God, can we just have 5 more minutes? We're not ready yet. Can you just wait?" And he said, they don't want recess? And I said, "Oh no, they want recess, but they want it when they're ready, and they're not ready right now because they're right in the middle of what they're doing." And I think that's the other part that we need to think about. Blended learning is a disruptive, we're disrupting and reimagining education. We need to reimagine things like that. If they're not ready for recess and they want to take it when they're ready, maybe we need to rethink that. But right now, other teachers depend on me, so I have to get out there. And I can't tell you, though, how many days we have missed recess completely, and I'll look up and say, "Oh my gosh, we did it again. We missed recess." And they're like, "Okay, well, we'll just go later." And they're not even upset about it. You would think they'd be mad at me, but they're like, "Oh yeah, whatever." And so that's part of the change. The other change is that when it's time to go home, they're all groaning and moaning. "Oh, wait, not yet. I want to finish this." And they're taking their learning out of the class. They're walking out already planning with somebody how they're going to continue that learning at home. Or they're going to go ahead, "I'll do this part tonight at home, and then when we meet tomorrow, we'll finish this part together." And Their learning goes right with them, right out the door. And that's great because then parents get to see that enthusiasm as they come home, and they get to see how those students are excited about their learning and want to continue their learning at home. So I didn't really answer the question about homework. Homework has changed for me. I no longer am sending home paper pencil homework. Sometimes I do flip my lessons some, so that sometimes is what their homework is, if you think of it that way. But what I'm wanting them to do is if they take work home, I want it to be authentic. I want it to be connected to what they're already doing in the classroom, and have them just continue that learning as if give them a paper, pencil, something or other for practice. They work so hard when they're here. Oh my gosh, from the time they walk in, some of them as early as 7:45, until the time they leave, they are working the whole time. They are engaged the whole time. They're tired when they leave. I'm tired, so I know they're tired. So if we're all tired from our full day of 100% engagement, do they really need that homework? Because they haven't wasted a minute at school. So my answer to that is no. So I don't have a homework schedule. I do ask them to read at home, that they can continue, to read, but they read online and they read digitally and in books all day at school. So I know they're reading because I'm watching them and hearing them. And so homework has changed for me. It's what learning you want to take home with you as you walk out the door is great. If you don't want to take any learning home, that's okay too. Because here at school, I know where they are. I know their path. I'm leading them. If they need me, I'm pulling them one to one or 1 to 5 or whatever. I'm working with them. And I use my students to help as well. Some of my students make videos for me, and their videos are awesome. I found out when I became a blended learning teacher that not only am I not the only teacher in the room, but I'm sometimes not the best in the room. My students are able to teach each other so much better sometimes than I am. A couple of years ago, my friend Thomas, a young second grader, helped me out a great deal. I was two groups wanted to have FaceTime with me at the same time. In other words, they both requested small group time with me. And I was trying to figure out the logistics of how I would work with one and then work with the other. And Thomas said, oh, well, I did that math lesson yesterday, so I'll just take this group to the whiteboard over there and teach them, and then you can teach the other group. There was no, I didn't say, hey, Thomas, will you help me out here? He piped right up. And part of that comes from blended learning has allowed this learning environment to be a truly learning community. They really care about each other, and they really care about the progress that they're making, and they work together to meet those goals. I'd like to end and maybe open it up for some questions, but I'd like to end by telling my favorite story of what a collaborative and group they are, and also what a great community they are. I had a student a couple of years ago, Hunter. And Hunter was very methodical and about going through the math curriculum, and a little slow, and sometimes a little distracted. And so he was the last one to finish the math curriculum for the year. And several students had finished early, couple of weeks early, and he's still, trudging along and doing the lessons and doing the work. And it got to the day when he was getting ready to do the final unit test. And I said, Hunter, do you want me to take the cover of this consumable math book and put it in recycling? He said, nope. He said, when I finish this test, I'm going to tear that book up into pieces and throw them. And I said, well, okay. And so he's taking his final unit test, and he finished his test, and he stood up and he yelled to the entire class, that's it. I'm done. I'm finally finished. I just took the last unit test. And he took his math book and he tore it into confetti and threw it in the air. And the entire class, 24 other students, ran over and patted him on the back and, oh, Hunter, we're so proud of you. What a great job you did. And there was no stigma attached with being the last person to finish. Nobody was saying, Hunter, I've been done for 2 weeks. What have you been doing, dude? There was none of that. They were so proud that he had made it just like the rest of them had, and there was a celebration. And I think that community, that learning community that I see every day is, I really do think it's because of blended learning, because they all understand we're all on our own path, but we're also all in this together. So there's just a few minutes left, I think maybe 5 or 10. Are there any questions that you might have? I don't know, Katie or Ryan, if you can help with that, or if the questions can be typed. Whatever.
Yeah, folks can type questions into the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can turn your mic on and ask the question. This is a perfect time for questions.
Well, if there's no questions, I can talk a little bit about our team. This year, I am fortunate enough that I have a brand new team, and there's 4 of us. And when I say brand new, they are not only new to this grade level and new to kind of the school itself, but they are new teachers. One is brand new. The other has 3 years experience and one has 6 years experience. So they're fairly new to education. And 2 of them had already said yes to blending and had applied and been accepted in our district. You do have to apply to be a blended learning teacher. The reason for that right now is because they're going to put thousands of dollars worth of equipment in your classroom. And they want you to have somewhat of a committed agreement that you are going to use that equipment, that you're going to use it purposefully, and that you're going to take the plunge and jump in and really shift from a traditional to a blended environment. So anyway, 2 had already been accepted, and 1 unfortunately joined us after the application days were over. So, but we did get permission for her to go ahead and sort of faux blend, if you want to use that word. So anyway, they're brand new. They're all for blending, and it's been great for me to work with them, because as a team, we all sit down twice a week for an hour at a time that we've set aside, and we build in Blackboard together, and we decide together what our vision is for this unit of study or that unit of study, and what paths we need to provide for our 80-some different learners. And in fact, it's going so well that we are actually going to step out a little bit and push ourselves a little bit farther as educators, and come March or April, we're going to try doing some blending that is all inclusive. So it will include all of our almost 90 students, and we will, as teachers, we will have the students choose which direction they need to go. And so in other words, we'll just take all of our 80 and throw them together, not in a physical environment, but within their learning environments, and mix them up. So we're really excited to give that a try. I saw a question come in about substitutes. Oh, that's such a great question, and I should have covered that earlier. Substitutes are actually quite a bit easier because everything's on Blackboard. I just spent almost a week and a half in China, and when I got ready to leave, I just had to make sure everything was ready to go on Blackboard for 2 to 3 weeks. The week before I left, the week I was gone, and the week that I came back, to make sure that everything would run smoothly. And then I would say I'd leave a note for the substitute that says everything's on Blackboard. And they don't have a password to get in, but the students do. So I just say everything's on Blackboard. And so go ahead and ask one of the students to log in for you and leave you a computer so you can see. It's like my plan book. It will tell you exactly what they need to do and where they need to go, and they know what to do, and trust them. That's hard sometimes for substitutes. I came back one day from being gone to a training, and I had a note from the substitute. I never get bad notes, and it was a terrible, your students were loud and they were this and they were that, and I thought, oh my gosh, what happened? So I sat down at a group of boys, and I said, hey guys, I'm reading this note from the substitute. Did we have a really rough day yesterday? And they said, well, no. And I said, well, she says, and I read what she wrote to them, and Cooper looked at me and he said, well, I just don't think she understands a collaborative environment. And I went, oh, okay, totally makes sense. That's why she thinks you're loud, because you're all collaborating and working. And it was great that they get that. They're like, yeah, this is how we are every day, and we're not going to look like a traditional classroom. So actually, it's a lot easier to leave the plans for a substitute because the kids know what to do, and they don't take advantage of that because they know I'm going to be back the next day probably, but they also know I can check in with them every day. They email me. My students are on email, and they emailed me every day when I was in China. And anything that would come up, any problem that would come up, they would email, and then we would, I would give them suggestions for taking care of it. One year I was at a conference, I think last year, and it was in November, and I happened to have the sheriff in my room. The kid that is sort of has his thumb on everyone's heartbeat. He knows what's going on all the time, and he can tell you what's going on all the time. So I had the sheriff emailing me every day, and at first his emails were lovely, like, "Oh, we had a great day today. We all got, this extra recess because we were really well behaved. You would have been really proud of us." By the end of the week, I was getting emails like, "Well, so and so got in trouble in the bathroom because they were blah blah blah," and so it was funny. I felt like I was connected the whole time. So between email and Blackboard, I really don't leave very detailed subplans. And, one of the things you have to do is bring your principal along with that. You have to say and bring them in, and it's like, substitute plans and lesson book plans look different in a blended environment. So I saw a question pop up, but it's gone. So let me see if I can get that question back.
I can read it to you, Paula.
Okay.
Do you stay in touch with your students after they leave your school? How do they fare in school environments that are not blended, like in middle school and high school, and which are still the majority around? So maybe you could explain what it's like at Lawrence, and then how your students handle it when they don't go to blending from you.
That's a very good question. And actually in our district, we have 120 teachers K through 12 out of 900 classrooms. So you're right, that is they have a low chance, not in this building, but they have a low chance of going to a blended classroom possibly. But we have blended classrooms in our middle schools and high schools. So there is a huge, there's a chance that they will be in a blended environment. But that has happened. They have left my room and gone into a non-blended environment. And the biggest worriers are the parents. They worry a lot about, oh my gosh, they've been so successful this year, and they've been so engaged, and what's going to happen to them next year. And I tell the parents the same thing I tell the students at the end of the year. You've spent an entire year in a classroom that has given you the tools to be successful no matter what environment you're in. You now have grit and perseverance and a growth mindset, and you are the kind of student that knows not only how you learn best, but what tools you need to learn best. So now all you have to do is to take those tools with you into a new learning environment and use them. And most of the time, they are just as successful with me as they are with the next teacher because we've set them up to be. Do they miss the collaborative environment when they go to a more traditional setting? Absolutely. And their parents tell me they miss that as well. And that may be part of the reason that we have so many teachers here that are willing to take this leap. And so, like I said, next year we'll have 100%. And so this will no longer be a problem for me. Now I will be sending them from one blended learning environment to the next. And so that's a good feeling. I don't know, Katie, are we getting pretty close, or do we have other questions?
We're getting close on time. There's at least one other question in the chat. Earlier on, Christian asked, how do you use your video clips without being choppy? I don't know, Christian, if you can provide a little more detail there. I think it was asked at a specific point in the presentation.
Without being choppy. Well, I tell you, my videos are not publishable. They are, they're me. A lot of times I do them at home because it's quieter. I don't know about you, but it's always busy and loud here at school. But at home, I have a little bit of a quiet corner that I can go to. So I do them at home a lot. And at my house, I have cats and dogs and horses and goats and other things. And somebody besides my husband and children, are always making noise, and that comes across on the video. I don't stop and remake it. And if I make a mistake on a video, I don't stop and remake it, because you know what? When I taught in a whole group setting, I didn't stop I made mistakes all the time, and I just kept going. So my videos are not fabulous, beautiful, wonderful. But what's great about them is that they're quick and easy. I try to keep them no more than 5 to 8 minutes. They're explicit to just needs to be taught, because the kids can come to me for more, go on to the next video, investigate on their own. There's links of other more in-depth videos if I need them to go there. So I guess when you say, how do you keep them from being choppy, maybe they are, but that's okay. I love the app Explain Everything for videos, because my face isn't in it, and so I can get up Sunday morning and have like my hair in a ponytail and no makeup on and do videos. And so if that's what I want to do. And so I use Explain Everything, and it's just like an interactive whiteboard, and then I make that into a video, and then you can upload that on Blackboard. Sometimes I upload them into Vimeo as well with links, so you can do several different things there. What I like about that too is that I can, because it's like an interactive whiteboard, I can write on the whiteboard and explain right as I go, and so those are very effective for me. And then also I found a hook. I have lots of animals at home, and so I would put a picture of an animal and start the video with that animal's picture, and I would say, oh, this is Roscoe, he's my miniature donkey, let me tell you about him. And I would tell him about how funny he is, and then I would just scoot Roscoe's picture to the side and say, okay, let's get started. And they love those. Probably the meanest one I ever did was I was making brownies one time, and the little timer on the stove went off, and the video caught it. So then when I started the backup, I said, I bet you heard that timer on the stove. That was my brownies coming out of the oven. They're warm, and I'm going to put vanilla ice cream on them, and I'm going to eat them. And I took a picture, and I put it on there. And I always know when they get to that video, because they always say, oh, that's so mean that you have that picture of that delicious brownie on there. So I don't know if that answered your question, but they're fast and easy videos. So I think it's time. I do have to go pick up my students, actually. It's the school day, and they've been in June. So I think I'll need to go ahead and check out. So if you have any other questions, I did have I'm sorry I didn't get to this slide. This is where you can find me on Blackboard. I've the 5 ways to blend ebook. And also you can search for my name, and other webinars that I've done will come up. And then I have a blog, which was on the previous slide, which is blendedwithbarr.weebly.com. And so if you need more information, you can also email. But I'm off to pick up my students. So bye.
Paula, thank you so much. I'll give you a call in a bit, but
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Awesome presentation as always. Everyone, just a couple closing comments. We really appreciate your participation today, your active participation. Again, we've scheduled the spring out, but we are always getting started for the fall. And I put in the chat a couple times, the call for proposals for Blackboard World this summer is now open. It opened on Friday. I put the link in the chat. I'd encourage you to present and to attend BB World this summer. Thanks, everyone. And we will hopefully see you again on Monday in 2 weeks on February 8th.